Good morning. Good happy Tuesday morning, I think. Who knows anymore? It's hard to know what day of the week it is. Anyway, we're continuing with my novel, Accidental Christ. And I think we'll get right into it this morning. This is from chapter 1. I mentioned that it's kind of challenging for me anyway to read a novel because indentations and italics and stuff, indicate when it's flashbacks and things like that. So every once in a while I'll try to make comments about kind of what's going on. I thirst. Lazar rushed to the large clay basin that rested upon the ground to the left of the crosses and soaked the sponge in vinegar and gall. Try to get him to take 2 or 3 swallows, whispered Brother Apollonius as he handed Lazar a spiked reed. It'll work very quickly on a man of his weight. He should be unconscious in only a few moments. These words did not comfort Lazar, who knew that death by crucifixion resulted from suffocation. Once his master was unconscious, he'd be unable to push his body up and away from the cross to breathe. If he was not removed quickly, he would die. If he was taken down too soon, the mob would suspect. Lazar speared the dripping sponge upon a sharpened stalk of hyssop and lifted it toward the bleeding lips. Master, drink. Jesus opened his swollen eyes, then dropped his head to take the venom-soaked sponge between his teeth. He swallowed more than he imagined possible before coughing up the last mouthful. His mouth and gums immediately became numb, and the burning in his muscles disappeared. He lifted his head and reckoned it was an hour to sunset and the start of the great Shabbat. He squinted to see the crowd of onlookers. Earlier in the day they watched him scourged by the soldiers. Now they gathered at the top of the hill to see him die. Pilate's men were holding them at a safe distance. That, at least, was going as planned, he thought. Would they really believe he would die after only 6 hours on the cross? After all, it often takes a crucified man 4 or 5 days to die. Could they see that he was only secured to the beams by ropes and not nailed to the planks like the 2 poor souls hanging on either side of him? Death would come to them when their legs were broken. His own death must be a public humiliation of a nation, the crucifixion of a dream. Jesus envied his companions. It became impossible to keep his eyes opened. Determined to master even the conditions of his unconsciousness, he began silently to recite his genealogy, the litany of his fathers, the mantra of his duty. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob and Judah, Perez and Herzon, Aram and Amminadab, Nahshon and Salmon, Boaz and Obed, the father of Jesse, sire of great David. He could not remember a time when these names did not dominate his life. As an infant, They were his lullaby. Nathan, Matha, Mani, and Meliah, Eliakim, Jonam, Joseph, and Judah, Simon, Levi, Mattha, and Joram, Eliezer, Jose, Er, and Elmodad. As a child in Egypt, they were the prelude to his daily lessons. Kosam, Adi, Melchi, and Neri, Shalahiel, Zerubbabel, Neasa, and John, Judah, Joseph, Shemai, and Mathai, Ma'ath, Nagai, Hasli, and Nahum. As a man, they embodied the hopes of his family, his people, his nation. Amos, Mathat, Joseph, and Janai, Melchi, Levi, Mathath, and Heli, the sire of wise Joseph, Scone of King David, the husband of Mary, the Benjamite maid. Wise Joseph. Jesus tried to picture the face of his father. It was difficult. He dimly remembered a tall, frail old man who each year visited him at the academy in Alexandria. He was well respected by the Egyptian classmasters, who seemed quite eager to follow his unique requests concerning his son's education. Joseph was the direct descendant of King David and one of the richest men in Judea. His father, Heli, had been extremely influential during the reign of Herod the Great, and was, next to David himself, the family's most revered ancestor. As Jesus grew older, it became increasingly clear to him that his mother's marriage to Joseph was a most singularly important event in Jewish culture. Mary was a purebred Benjamite and nearly 30 years younger than Joseph. Since the time of the judges, the tribe of Benjamin had been cut off from the other tribes by a terrible curse. Tradition held that the Benjamites triggered a bitter feud with the priestly tribe of Levi by refusing to turn over certain infidels suspected of assaulting a Levite and butchering his concubine. In their capacity as the spiritual leaders of the chosen people, the Levites promptly pronounced an irrevocable curse upon the Benjamites, causing the remaining tribes to vow, "None of us shall give his daughter in marriage to a Benjamite." In the ensuing battles, the tribe of Benjamin was nearly exterminated. When peace was finally restored, only 600 Benjamite men remained alive. The other tribes lamented the fact that one of their own should be so cut off, and feared that an entire tribe might become extinct. Nonetheless, the curse upon that generation could not be undone. To remedy the predicament, the priestly Levites agreed to allow the surviving Benjamite men to steal their wives from among the daughters of Shiloh in Bethel. The men of Shiloh, because of their cautious neutrality during the conflict, were obviously too unmanly to deserve mastership of their women. Although the Benjamites remained relatively few in number, they were to grow mighty in power and influence, even presenting Israel with its first king, Saul. This paradox sprang from the fact that the choicest real estate in all the promised land remained by tradition the birthright of the tribe of Benjamin. allotted to them by Joshua when the children of Israel first slaughtered the original inhabitants. The holy city of Jerusalem was the crown of Benjamin's inheritance, and the great temple was its jewel. The union of the houses of David and Saul had long been the dream of Orthodox nationalists. Such a symbol could serve to heal the thousand festering wounds of regional and religious factionalism that crippled the region. Under the right circumstances, a son from this union could be held up as the hereditary king of the Jews. Such a star could capture the imagination of the people, usurp the power of petty kings such as Herod, and perhaps even lead a revolt against the Roman occupation army and ultimately rule a united Palestine from the mythical throne of David. The branches are grafted to the root of the tree. Shun Benjamin's womb bears great David's seed. The tribes are united. The word is restored. A king for all Israel, Messiah and Lord. On Jesus' 11th birthday, the headmaster of the Alexandrian Academy called him into his chambers. A stranger was seated near the window, a man robed in white linen. Jesus, I present Theodos, the patriarch of the Egyptian order of the Therapeutae. During your stay with us, he has served as your father's agent. He brings exciting news. In a few days you will be leaving us and returning to Palestine. It saddens me to think we'll be losing you, but a great adventure lies before you. I'm confident that your years with us have prepared you for what is to come. Master, what is this about? I have not completed my classes. Surely my father would prefer that I... Theodos stood up and gently pushed Jesus down into a chair. Sit down, my boy. Sit. Theodos was obviously very nervous. He paced back and forth across the room, cracking his knuckles one by one. He cleared his throat several times before speaking. When he finally began, his words tumbled from his mouth so fast that Jesus had great difficulty following his thoughts. Your father and I are colleagues. He has instructed me to tell you certain things. I would prefer you heard these things from him, but he has insisted, and as we are old friends, I hardly know where to begin. Do you know who Heli was? My grandfather? Heli, your father's father, was a David. By that I mean a direct and unpolluted descendant of the great king. For centuries, it has been the dream of our order and the Essenes, and indeed all throughout the world who piously worship the one God whose name may not be spoken. The poor man was so flustered, he stopped to take a deep breath and clear his voice. Been our dream to restore David to the throne of a united kingdom and install the family of Zadok permanently to the high priesthood. Heli, your grandfather, was the first David in centuries to nearly accomplish this sacred task. He challenged Herod the Great for the throne of Israel, but sadly it was not meant to be. He was later convinced, some say convinced, others say, well, it doesn't matter. He was convinced by Herod to temporarily temporarily be satisfied with the Patriarchy of Ephesus and all the diaspora of the 5 provinces of Asia Minor. Young Jesus could not follow a word he was saying. Master, please, Patriarch of who in Ephesus? What is diaspora? Jews, lad, Jews. The diaspora are the Jews of the outside world. Oh, there are so many more Jews outside Palestine than within her borders. And unlike the natives, the diaspora have great wealth. How do you think Herod the Great paid for all of his monumental building? Not with local funds, I assure you. Herod's wealth came from the diaspora who dwell in Rome and Greece and Asia Minor. People who gladly gave of their wealth to feel like Jews. Heli was their leader in Asia Minor. He swelled their ranks by converting thousands of Gentiles. If they were not born Jews, he made them Jews by baptizing them. He was really quite amazing. Then he taxed them. Well, collected from them yearly tithes. And each year brought this treasure to great Herod and delivered the Essenes and the other cults into alliance with him. For a while, it appeared that he could, with the help of a Zadokite high priest, the family of Zadok are pledged to the Davids. But the time was not right, no, not right for Heli, then not right for your father. Great Herod, of course, is now dead. His son Antipas is weak, a fool, and he has lost the goodwill of the local cults and the diaspora. Heli's old alliance has crumbled. But now a Zadok is high priest. The time could be right. But your father is now too old. Don't you see? Jesus stood up abruptly. I do not see, sir. You must forgive me. I do not understand a word you are saying. Jesus turned to the headmaster. Master, what has all this to do with me? It's my birthday, and I wish to rejoin my friends. Perhaps my father can better explain these things to me when he... You! Theodos shouted. You, my young friend, are the David of your generation. Do you not see? For all intents and purposes, your blood makes you king of the Jews. Jesus sat down. This is absurd, he thought. King of the Jews, feuding shepherds and merchants whose only talent seems to be a historic predisposition for disenfranchisement. He certainly did not want to be king of anything, least of all the Jews. He was not particularly ashamed of being a Jew, but in his mind he was an Egyptian, a student, a very good student. He was going to be a physician. He loved Egypt, the grandeur of its past and the wonders of its sciences, contrasted with the colorful tradesmen and calm philosophers of Hellenized Alexandria. Young Jesus saw the Israelites as a collection of superstitious and primitive tribesmen who worshipped a violent and sadistic desert demon they believed must be fed by an endless flood of animal blood. Although he could make no sense of Theodos's words, the look on the old man's face and that of his headmaster as well told him they were quite serious. Already he knew this would not be the last he would hear of this royal bloodline nonsense. For the first time in his life, he wished he were someone else. Soon after Theodos's bungling revelation, Jesus was returned to the land of his birth. However, he would not go to Judea, which was too politically charged to be safe, but to Nazareth in Galilee, where his family had relocated. And I think this is where we'll end up today. We'll pick it up at this time tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying it. And remember that if you'd like to follow along, the story, Accidental Christ, is free on Kindle Unlimited. And on Kindle Unlimited. And the first edition hardbound is extremely hard and to get at collector's prices. And please don't, it's a good book, but it's not that good. I mean, it's not $700 a copy book good. Okay, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Bye-bye.